Hey, everybody. The Jets clinched their 10th consecutive losing season on Sunday, 23-10 to the Ravens. We've known that was coming eventually this season for a while, but are there positives to be taken from Sunday's game? We'll take a look at it on our 4 Downs edition of Flight Plan. I'm Tim McMaster. He's Zack Rosenblatt. Please like the show wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome to the Baggage Handlers on YouTube. Love you guys. Give us a 5-star review and some comments. We're going to read comments at the end of the year. To kind of the best comments of the year on Apple and what people came through with.
Leave reviews.
All good stuff. Leave good reviews. Leave funny reviews. Leave, whatever. Just make sure there's 5 stars. All right, Zack, before we get into the 4 Downs, how was the train ride to Baltimore and back?
It was great. I loved taking the train. I took the Acela. Nice comfy seats. You get there in 2 hours. I didn't have to do what Connor, I guess, is closer because he's in South Jersey, but he drove, which I think is stupid personally, but you got to do what you got to do.
The best thing about the train to me as being in New York is that you get there 5 minutes before it leaves and you walk on the train. There's no,
I will say,
no baggage claim. There's no check. There's nothing. You just get there, you get on the train, you go, you get off the train, you're on your way.
I will say I do panic, so I do get there earlier than that. But especially going out of Newark is kind of chaotic because there's a bunch of trains happening at once. And I went out of Newark this time, and then coming back for Baltimore, they announced what track it was going to be on, and then it was leaving soon. I was like, oh crap! And I ran to my train. I wound up being fine, obviously, but I was like, no, I just saw that. When did it get up there? But yeah, took the train, had some seafood in Baltimore. Actually didn't wind up having a crab cake. I thought they were going to give us them at the stadium, but whatever. Crab cakes I like. They're not my favorite, so I wasn't I need to go crazy and get crab cakes. But Baltimore's fine. There's some cool areas. But another game that we will forget in the annals of Jets history as we move past this day right now. If you ask me about this game in 4 weeks, I probably won't be able to tell you much. That's how I feel about it. So.
Camden Yards, they have a hot dog that has mac and cheese and crab meat on top.
Ooh, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, let's get into the 4 Downs. Let the people that don't like our chit chat stop complaining, and we'll get right to the football. First down, we're going to focus on Breece Hall a bit, and unfortunately, the fumble. We should mention that he was a force on the drive leading up to the fumble in the fourth quarter. The Jets at that point already behind by 10, but it was a chance to get within 3 with still plenty of time on the clock. But he has a great 40-yard run after the catch, and then a hard run 15-yard after the catch to get down into the red zone. And then really a good run where he may have scored if he had held onto the football, but he loses it at the goal line. But Zack, more than the fumble, your take on the reaction to the fumble, not just from Breece, who was clearly upset, but from Aaron Glenn, and just how that fumble kind of fit into the day.
I have so many different thoughts on Breece because it was such an interesting week with Breece. And I can get into that in a second, but the fumble itself, at the very least, that was a competitive fumble. His body was backwards and he was trying to push into the end zone. But you also fumbled it at the goal line in a game where if they scored that, they're down by 3 points, and all of a sudden they have a shot against a Ravens team that does not look very good to me. So it was costly, and it's just another instance of this team just shooting themselves in the foot, which they do over and over and over again. And and I'll get into Aaron Glenn and all stuff about the foundation and all that stuff in a bit. But the fumble ultimately because it's hard to get riled up about anything right now because these games do not matter. That's kind of what my story was about. It's kind of okay to have moral victories right now because we all know that the final scores don't really matter. I know people want them to win and stuff like that, but I think if you leave games feeling okay, then that's kind of a win. You felt okay leaving this game because you were beating the Ravens after the first quarter and all that. Anyway, back to Breece. I got sidetracked because that's on my mind, but. So the fumble, he looked like he was upset about it, but he claimed he was just really tired and that Glenn was just lifting him up. So, and Glenn is kind of, I find it notable how aggressively Glenn is going to bat for Breece, and it just kind of reaffirms my belief that they were only going to trade him if they were kind of blown away at the deadline, and that I feel like this is a team that wants him to come back next year. So I think Aaron Glenn is kind of going out of his way to be like, that's my guy. That's my guy. Shit happens. Like Aaron Glenn of all coaches saying that about a fumble is pretty jarring, but that's where we're at in this season. He's trying to do positive reinforcement now, which I get because you need to coach up these young guys for next year. I don't know. Maybe he's gone too far in the other direction, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. But yeah, Breece, my takeaway from yesterday is just that they clearly value him to the point where they want to keep him. And, I'd heard like rumblings like a little before the deadline that they were open to the idea of franchise tagging him if they have to. Like they never felt like they had to get rid of him. And so they can do that because they have so much cap space. And I think the franchise tag is like 12 million or 14 or something like that. Ideally, you come up with a contract, whether it's 2 years. So, whatever it is. But I do think now more than like if you had asked me before the season at the deadline, like I feel pretty confident that he'll be back next year. I don't say that with 100% confidence, but I feel like he'll be back. And to the point about it being an interesting week, just to, circle back. Like, so the week starts with, I actually wasn't in the locker room when this happened, but, Justin Fields is benched and Brian Costello from the New York Post goes up to Fields and asks if he has a reaction to getting benched. Like it wasn't him going at Justin Fields. It wasn't anything uncomfortable. It was perfectly professional. And it was Justin Fields was like, I forget what he said. I think he said shit happens or something like that. You move forward. And so Breece quote tweeted Brian Costello's from the Post, his quote of Justin Fields, and Breece like went at Brian Costello a bit, called him pathetic. And it was a tweet that kind of alarmingly blew up because fans kind of are very anti-media these days, I would say. But anyway, it was just all kind of dumb stuff. I don't think Breece really understood what Cos was trying to do or the tone of him going up to Justin Fields. At the end of the day, like if your starting quarterback gets benched, you're going to be like, hey, how do you feel about getting benched? Like it's not a trap question. It's just a thing. You ask a reaction. You ask the coach, okay, you decided to make this decision. How can you explain why you did that? Like that's just how this works. They don't have to answer it. They're under no obligation to answer it. Anyway, so that happens with Breece. That's kind of the energy going into the week. And then, he wasn't running the ball particularly great. I mean, he had 44 yards on 16 carries. I do still think they probably use Isaiah Davis a little too much on third downs. There were some plays where I thought they should have given it to Breece and not Isaiah. Like get your best player on the field. Like that fourth down where they went for it and incomplete. Breece wasn't on the field, and I think the threat of him is notable for the defense. And then they did start to use him more / better in the passing game. It still wasn't enough in my mind. He had 2 targets early in the game, and then not again until that drive that you mentioned with the fumble where he had the 40-yard catch on a check down, and then he had another like 15-yard catch. I think Tyrod is much more willing to do the check downs. We didn't see enough of it still. Like Breece should be getting 6 to 10 targets every game. So we're still in a place where I still don't think they're using him right. We're in a place where I think he's become kind of like the face and voice of the team right now because Garrett Wilson is injured and Sauce Gardner's gone, and Jermaine didn't talk after the game, and so Breece has kind of become the face of it. So like that tweet kind of blows up because it's coming from Breece also. So anyway, it's just another fun week in Jets lore. And my ultimate takeaway from this down is that I think Breece is back next year.
All right. Well, you mentioned Glenn too. Do you want to get into that now, or do you want to?
Yeah, let's do it.
So take it away.
About Glenn?
Well, you said I'll get more into that later about Glenn.
Yeah. Just so like I totally get how he's operating right now. Just broadly in terms of Glenn, like he got some criticism for his decision to go for it on that fourth down instead of punting it. I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I just didn't love the lead up to it. Isaiah Davis running on third down, I believe, and the play didn't exactly work. I think Tyrod got hit on trying to target John Metchie. I didn't really blame that one as much. The one that kind of annoyed me was earlier when they ran it on 3rd and 7 with Isaiah. Like the idea was like you were going to go for it on 4th after that, and then they wound up punting it. And I get it. Like they thought they would get more on that 3rd down. They didn't, so they wound up punting it. But just call a better play on 3rd down, or give it to Breece Hall, or throw it to John Metchie, who's playing really well. Like throw it to Breece. Do a better play on 3rd down to set up going for it on 4th down. But broadly, I actually do think this coaching staff and Aaron Glenn they've gotten better. I think he's gotten better as a decision maker as the season's gone along. I think he felt a lot better coming out of this game than maybe we have in past losses. And so that was what I'd been saying from the midseason point, is that the first half of the season was not good for him. I think he did a poor job in a lot of ways. I think he needed to show over the last half of the season enough to like feel confident he could be the guy. I don't think we're there quite yet, but I feel better about it. But also, like, I don't know, like moral victories, like I said, they're okay right now because we've all just accepted the season's over already. And so he keeps saying, like, we're building the foundation and we're doing things. It's not ending in a win necessarily, but we're doing all these things. Like, my thing is, they've shown no evidence to this point that they are a team of players that know how to win. And so they keep making the same mistakes each week. And I know they've reduced on a certain number of mistakes. The passing game was better. Like, there's a lot of things you can hang your hat on. The defense is really good in the first half. Like, I know we're going to get into a lot of that stuff. So they're showing like slight improvement in some areas, but like we're near the end of the season and they're still making the same mistakes. So I get you're a young team and all that stuff, but like Breece Hall is a guy that, like I said, you want him to be here next year. He's been here for 4 years. He's making that mistake. You're getting these penalties at bad moments and on defense. And so I still, I know things foundationally, that's more like behind the scenes stuff. That's in practice. That's all that kind of stuff. But, everybody's kind of banking on Aaron Glenn's vision for the future, and it's going to be on him to see that it happens this way. But if we get to the start of next season and these guys are still making the same mistakes, then he's going to be on the hot seat. So I just wanted to say that. Like, I do think he's gotten better. I do think I understand where they're at, but I also am kind of tired of hearing the same quotes over and over. And I don't even blame him for saying them because it's such a lost season, and there's only even so many questions there's left for us to ask at this point. But anyway, just
a lot of games left. I thought it was good in your story, or not good, but almost jarring in your story. This paragraph, that's the message Glenn is trying to impart on his players. The Jets absolutely have to fix what ails them. And then you list what ails them, namely their inconsistent defensive performance, ill-timed penalties, ill-timed turnovers, questionable coaching decisions, inconsistent quarterback play, and incomprehensible lack of takeaways. It's a lot of stuff. That is what is currently ailing this team. All right, on to second down. John Metchie looks like a legitimate NFL receiver, scored a touchdown for the second straight week. Overall, 6 catches, 65 yards for Metchie. He just seems to get open.
Yeah, he's really impressed me. I think out of like all the trades they made, he felt like the one that was the most throw-in because he like hadn't really done anything in the NFL, and the Eagles weren't playing him at all, and the Jets just wanted to get a draft pick for Michael Carter, and so I didn't really think much of the deal. Once Garrett Wilson goes down, he's going to play a lot, but he just seems like a guy that is in the right place at the right time. Everything you hear about is his work ethic is crazy. Like Aaron Glenn said that he gets to the facility at 6 a.m. and he's in there catching balls alone in the indoor facility, and I think it was Breece Hall was saying like, during walkthroughs, he's just like double checking everything because he wants to make sure he's in the right place and he's doing the right things so they don't have to redo it. And so he's really smart, heady player. Seems like he's already somebody who this locker room respects. And then, he gets open, he catches the ball when it's thrown to him, and he does his job. Like, I don't think he's a superstar, but through 2 games, he's impressed me. Like, we need to see this over the course of a season. It's only 2 games, but like if he can keep playing like this, you can go into next season and be like, okay, we can feel pretty good about John Metchie as our slot receiver, I would say. And, you have him and you have Garrett Wilson, and we're still seeing what we have in the Jets saying this. We're still seeing what we have in A.D. Mitchell, who I think has shown flashes of potential, but I don't think you can bank on him just yet. And then you add another receiver, whether it's in the draft or in free agency or something like that. And then you feel pretty good about that room. And I think, Darren Muji, and I tweeted about this, tied to Metchie in particular, but some other guys too, and I'll get into that with the defense. But he's just done such a good job in the margins of these trades, like throw-ins in like Mitchell or Metchie, or Mozzie Smith. Maybe it doesn't really amount to anything here, but the Harrison Phillips and Jawan Briggs and Jarvis Brownlee, like these are all like margin trades where you didn't really give up much, and you got guys who could be starters for you, or role players or rotational guys next year, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. If Metchie pans out the way he looks, like this is a guy who in college had a lot of talent. He just went through a lot. He had his ACLs. He dealt with like cancer. and he's got an interesting story. And if he's just like fully healthy now, then maybe he could show the potential that he did in college. And then you kind of have a diamond in the rough. And the Jets haven't had a lot of those at wide receiver, certainly. So that'd be a huge boon to this offense.
Third down, the defense in the first half. Second half was, obviously they got beat up 20-3 in the second half. But the first half, the defense, which we've talked about, it's been decimated by trades and everything. Yep. But 8 pressures. They got a sack from, you mentioned him, Jerron Briggs. I don't know if you want to get more into that, but they held the Ravens to 72 yards in the first half. Lamar had just 59 yards through the air, 0 for 5 on third down. A lot of positives there that Baltimore made corrections and was much better in the second half. But even in the whole game, Jackson was just over 150 yards passing. There was no point where the Jets were really getting lit up by this Baltimore team.
Yeah, I'd say talent-wise, they're going to be outmatched most weeks at this point, like defensively versus offenses, because I just don't think they have the same level of like game breakers that they did before. But like you said, yeah, they were containing the run quite a bit. Like Derrick Henry did not look very good. I do think he's lost a step, but the run defense was really good. I thought Phillips was really good. Briggs, you mentioned, he seems to be getting better each week. I think we kind of forget how young he is because he came in a trade and he was kind of like an unknown. But he's only in his second or third year, I believe. He's like 24. And he seems to have a lot of potential as a pass rusher. I think he had like 4 or 5 pressures. He had a sack. I think he had a QB hit or 2. He's a guy that is very cheap next year and could be a starter, if not like the 3rd defensive tackle in your rotation. So he's really impressed me. I think the linebackers have played a lot better, especially since Quincy got benched. The back end still has some inconsistencies they need to fix. They had some real-time penalties, like the Tony Adams one.
Yeah.
And I think Azareye'h Thomas had a penalty at one point as well, which were both on third down, if I'm not mistaken. So the Adams one I know that was a rough one, and it led to a Derrick Henry touchdown, and that came after Glenn went for it on 4th down, and it backfired pretty quickly because of what happened on the other end. But so they have a lot to work on the back end, but the defense played a lot better, and if they can keep that progress going through the end of the season, you'll feel better about that unit, and it's positive. The pass rush did slow down in the second half. Will McDonald, I don't even know if he had any pressures, which, he's week to week. You don't know what you're going to get with him. It seems like Jermaine was really good, I thought, especially in the first half. So you need some guys to play a little more consistently. But overall, just a much better game. And, you held the Ravens really to 23 points, but it was more like 20. Like by the time they scored that field goal at the end, the game was pretty much over. So really you only allowed 20 to a team that had been averaging like 27 points a game the last few weeks. So you take that as a win, considering where the defense has been this season at times.
Finally, 4th down. We got to talk about the quarterback position. Tyrod Taylor. It was clearly an upgrade over Justin Fields as far as we got to see more from the receivers and from this offense overall, and Metchie getting the targets he got and all that stuff. 17 of 28, 222 yards. He did throw the interception late, but that was meaningless. The game was over and he was just throwing it up. So Taylor, I think, was exactly what we thought we would get from Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, there's definitely ups and downs. He definitely held on to the ball too long a few times, got a couple sacks. But he was willing to make the throws. And so it was a clear upgrade to me in terms of passing the ball from Fields to him. He had a connection with Metchie, clearly. He's more willing to do the checkdowns, or he's better at them with the Breece Hall. And the offense just seemed to have a little better flow to it. It wasn't perfect, like I said. He is what he is. He's not a star, but he can do the job, and maybe he's the quarterback through the end of the season. Or if he gets hurt, I'm curious what they do. But yeah, I was perfectly fine with what he did. Not good, not bad. The Ravens defense has been much, much better. So considering that, I thought he was solid. And now you go ahead and, they have the Falcons, who aren't a great team, but they are a good pass defense. That'll be another challenge for them. Week after that, I believe, is the Dolphins, which they don't scare you quite as much. And so then you have Jaguars, and then you have the Saints. So this is a stretch coming up of teams that I think rank decently pass defense wise. So it'll be a good test for him. I think he's kind of put it like a lot of these guys, he's probably not going to be back next year, I would assume, unless they wanted him to be the backup to a rookie or something. But he's kind of putting on tape that he can still play and trying to get an opportunity as a backup for somebody else next year, I would say. And I think he deserves to be that because he's a good locker room guy. I do want to just quickly give a quick shout out to Taylor Delgado. He said it's his birthday today. So, he's one of our OG listeners.
Spending his birthday with us.
Yeah.
All right, Taylor.
Happy birthday, Taylor.
Appreciate that. Taylor's, and speaking of Taylor's, the other Taylor did stay healthy also, played the entire game, which is key and probably key to him as far as next year, right? Like, I feel like he's been hurt so much that he does need to like play a long stretch of being healthy if he wants to prove himself to another team out there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, like we wound up scrounging 20 minutes out of this game, but I just like
we did it.
Like I when that game ended, I'm like, what the hell am I supposed? I had like no interest in any of the storylines after that game. Frankly, it's just like we've reached already this point. We have 6 games left, which sounds like not that many, but also sounds like too many at the same time. I don't want to complain about covering football because I do love my job and I love doing this. But my point being, like, these games are just so boring and like the storylines are lacking because they don't have like a young quarterback that you can, evaluate, and Garrett Wilson's not playing, and I don't know, like there's not a lot of things that are interesting. A lot of the interesting stuff is about next year. So I'm sure in the coming weeks I'll be writing about what they might do in the offseason. I know I'm planning on doing something like that coming up. And I imagine that's going to be a big part of the topics for our pod going forward. And maybe we'll have to get Connor Rogers or Dane or something on in the coming week or two. But I mean, it is Thanksgiving week, so it's a little different this week. But and I don't know. I'm thinking about next year already, just like the Jets are. And so going to these games has been a little rough. But the Falcons game should be competitive. I think the Saints game and the Dolphins games actually should be competitive. So we have a few competitive games coming up. I would guess if the Jets are going to win any games, 1 or 2 of them are going to come in this stretch. So something to look forward to, I guess.
They did move up from 5th to 4th
in
the Tankathon rankings because Shedeur Sanders bringing a big win for the Cleveland Browns. Also, they almost moved up more because the Giants almost won again. Seems like the Giants almost win a lot.
Well, they fired their DC.
Yeah. The rough times for the Giants and the Jets, obviously. But yeah, so they almost moved up 2 spots, but up to number 4 as far as the Tankathon goes. And I saw some jokes about the halftime for the Jets after leading at the half. Maybe there was some comments in the locker room to, hey, let's not get carried away here. And they did lose it in the second half. But that's not really what happens. All right. We will be back later this week. I think we should get somebody on to talk about things other than this season.
Yeah.
So let's work on that.
Somebody out.
Well, I guess for Wednesday, right? Because we could talk turkey too. But yeah, we'll try to do a show Wednesday. Obviously Thursday, Thanksgiving, plenty of football to watch there, and then hope everybody enjoys that, Black Friday and all that. But we'll be with you Wednesday to check in on all things Jets. Thanks for joining us here on Flight Plan.